Allow me to introduce myself. I am Anna. I am in my 42nd year of life. For 15 years I have shared my life with David as his spouse. Our home rests peacefully in the suburbs. Two young souls, each embarking on their journey at college now. To the casual observer, my life appears flawless, unwavering, unsurprising, secure. Yet within there exists an emptiness. David is a kind-hearted individual. He has consistently demonstrated responsibility, diligence, and dependability. Yet as time passed, the man who once gazed at me with such intensity gradually transformed into a figure who scarcely acknowledged my presence. Our marriage has its merits. No significant conflicts exist. There shall be no treachery, only quietude, a serene, courteous separation. We inhabit the same space like two individuals under one roof, managing expenses and shouldering duties together, yet not truly one another. He often finds himself toiling into the late hours of the night. Upon his return home, fatigue envelopes him. We discuss his meetings, the invoices, the latest updates. Yet, the subject of us remains unspoken. And when we lie in bed, there's a distance between us that seems greater than it once was. I have discovered the art of coexisting with it. Ways to smile when neighbors inquire about our well-being. What are some ways to stay occupied with tasks and daily rituals to avoid feeling overwhelmed by the silence? Yet, there are days when the struggle feels more intense than usual. At times, the weight of solitude bears down on my heart. It was during one of those days that Mark made his appearance. Since their college days, Mark has stood as David's closest companion. He has been a presence for many years. Festivities, grilling gatherings, celebrations of another year of life. He possesses a remarkable ability to put everyone at ease, radiant, humorous, and effortlessly approachable. For me, he has always simply been Mark, a companion, presence of security. On that particular afternoon, the doorbell chimed. Surprise was the last thing on my mind. As I swung the door open, he stood there before me. Mark, beaming, cradling a petite toolbox. "Hello, Anna," he remarked with a casual tone. David noted that the back door lock was acting up once more. I figured I'd drop in and see what's happening while I had a moment to spare. I blinked, taken aback by the unexpectedness of it all. "Oh, Mark, hello. That wasn't necessary." He gave a slight shrug. "I find myself with no pressing plans for the day. Moreover, you ought not to struggle with a stuck door." I welcomed him inside. He strolled through the house as he always did, at ease like one who was truly at home. For the next hour, I observed him labor over the door, a gentle hum escaping his lips. It was unremarkable, a solitary figure engaged in the art of repair. Yet, there was an undeniable quality to his movements. His keen observation of the world around him. He inquired whether there was anything in the kitchen that required repair. Should the faucet continue to drip as it did previously? Minor nuances that David had always overlooked. Upon his completion, I extended an invitation for coffee. "Of course," he replied, a smile gracing his lips. "Only if you're indulging in one as well." We gathered around the kitchen table, mugs cradled in our hands, engaged in conversation. Initially it was laid back. He inquired about the children. I inquired about his profession. However, the dialogue took a different turn. "You appear weary of late," he remarked softly. I blinked, taken by surprise. "Weary?" He inclined his head, his gaze gentle. "Not in a physical sense. Just here." He made a vague gesture toward his chest. "It seems as though there's a burden resting upon you." I found myself at a loss for words. It had been quite some time since anyone had posed that question to me. David remained oblivious. They didn't inquire. Yet Mark did. A subtle smile played on my lips as I attempted to dismiss it with nonchalance. "It's insignificant. Well, it's just life, I suppose." He inclined his head ever so slightly. "Anna, you realize you don't always have to say I'm fine, don't you?" A small fracture formed within me at that moment. It had been ages since someone allowed me the freedom to not be okay. We lingered in a serene pause. For the first time in years, I sensed that someone was truly seeing me. Beyond the surface. This is not the part one embody. Yet I remain. Mark finally rose to take his leave. I appreciate the coffee, he murmured gently. And Anna, should you ever find yourself in need of anything, even if it's just for a conversation, you are aware of my location. He paused at the threshold. Then he softly brushed his fingers against my arm. The touch was as delicate as a whisper, warm and inviting. Yet it hung in the air for a heartbeat more than necessary. Once he departed, I remained in the stillness of the home, gazing at the door. In that moment I became acutely aware of my heart racing, quicker than it ought to be. That evening, as I lay beside David in bed, I found myself unable to shake the memory of the way Mark had gazed at me. Not out of sympathy, not with indifference. However, with careful consideration. It ought to have been insignificant. Yet it happened. In that instant, a truth emerged that I had been reluctant to acknowledge. Loneliness enveloped me, so isolated that a single gentle touch from the one soul who acknowledged my existence stirred emotions I believed were long forgotten. A week had slipped by since Mark had mended the door. I believed the sensation would diminish. I reassured myself that it was merely a transient lapse in judgment, a brief contact that held no significance. Yet it remained steadfast. It hung in the air. Silently. Once more, David found himself toiling away into the late hours of the night. Once again I find myself dining in solitude. Once more the evening settled in, and the house loomed large, echoing with an unsettling emptiness. I lingered at the kitchen table, my eyes glued to my phone, yet the world around me faded into a blur. At that moment, a message appeared on the screen. Mark. Hello, I find myself in the vicinity. Shall I return the tool I borrowed during my last visit? My gaze lingered on the screen. The message was pure and untainted. It ought to have been a simple matter to decline. Yet my fingers danced across the keys before my mind could catch up. Myself. Certainly. I have returned. After 20 minutes had passed, the doorbell chimed. I opened it, and there he stood once more. There they stood, wearing that familiar, effortless smile. Hello, he murmured gently. Returned with this. Thank you, I responded, striving to maintain a calm tone. He cast a fleeting look beyond me, peering into the depths of the house. Is David burning the midnight oil once more? I inclined my head in agreement. Indeed. He's been busy lately. Mark offered a faint smile, yet a certain depth lingered in his gaze. Something that conveyed my awareness. Have you had dinner? He inquired. I gently shook my head. Not at this moment. I was merely planning to create something straightforward. After a brief pause, he finally spoke. Mind if I keep you company? I too have not partaken in any food. I ought to have declined. Yet I did not. Of course, I replied softly. We found ourselves preparing dinner side by side. A straightforward affair: pasta, a fresh salad, and a cherished bottle of wine I had been reserving for a special occasion. It had an oddly effortless quality to it. As we prepared our meal, our conversation flowed effortlessly, filled with laughter over the most trivial of matters. In that fleeting instant, it seemed as though I had company in the kitchen. For the first time in ages, I experienced a sense of buoyancy. We lingered at the table, savoring each bite. The dialogue took a turn. It transitioned from a light-hearted tone to something more profound and intimate. He inquired about the children. Now let's delve into my story. She is not David's wife, not a mother of 2 adult children. However, when was the last occasion you indulged in something solely for your own enjoyment? He inquired. I halted, taken by surprise. I can't recall, I confessed quietly. He inclined his head slightly. Is that so? Not a single pastime? A little treasure that belongs solely to you? I cast my gaze upon my plate. Absolutely not. Life simply became hectic, I suppose. Mark fell silent for a brief moment. Then he spoke softly. What a pity. You are worthy of more than mere existence. His words struck me with an intensity one hadn't anticipated. It had been years since anyone had uttered words like that to me. Not a soul, not even David. We lingered over dinner, the wine bottle now half depleted. As the dialogue meandered, it wove through the tapestry of recollections. Gatherings of yesteryear, steeped in nostalgia. Humorous instances we all experienced together. Yet, amid the laughter and the stillness, The atmosphere seemed altered. As I rose to gather the dishes, Mark rose alongside me. "Allow me to assist," he offered. I gently shook my head. "No, you are a visitor." Yet, he was already lifting the plates from my hands, his fingers grazing mine ever so gently. It was merely a trifle. Yet, it certainly did not feel like emptiness. We found ourselves standing next to each other at the sink. The kitchen lay in stillness, broken only by the gentle murmur of water flowing. His presence beside me was palpable, not too much to handle, simply existing. As I reached out to offer him a glass, our gazes intertwined. An unvoiced connection lingered in the air between us. Query. A moment of acknowledgement. An unsettling comprehension. I averted my eyes first, swiftly turning my gaze elsewhere. "Perhaps it's time to wrap things up," I murmured. "Indeed," he murmured gently. Yet, his voice had taken on a deeper timbre now, more subdued. As we finished, he hesitated at the threshold. Neither of us stirred. We were both at a loss for words. At last, a subtle smile graced his lips. "I appreciate the lovely dinner, Anna. It has been some time since I savored a meal quite like this." I inclined my head in agreement. Indeed, it was pleasant. Yet my heart raced uncontrollably. As he pivoted to depart, a moment of uncertainty gripped him. Then he extended his hand, mirroring our previous encounter, and gently brushed my arm. His hand hesitated, lingering just a moment more. This time I remained steadfast. "Good night, Anna," he said softly. "Good night, Mark," I murmured softly. As the door clicked shut behind him, an unsettling silence enveloped the house once more. Yet, the stillness had shifted from what it once was. It bore a greater weight. Electrified. That evening, I found myself in bed beside David, gazing up at the ceiling. He lay in slumber as he often did. Inhale and exhale with a serene rhythm. Utterly oblivious. All that occupied my mind was the way Mark had gazed at me during dinner. The sensation of his hand grazing against mine. The manner in which I wished he would hold on tight. It was merely a trifle. Merely dinner. A companion by my side. Yet, beneath the surface, I understood it was more than that. For the first time in years, I experienced a feeling that was unexpected and perhaps unwarranted. It filled me with fear. For I was aware of the paths such emotions could traverse. It unfolded on a Thursday evening. David was out of town for a 3-day business trip. The house carried a distinct air in his absence. More hollow, more subdued. Excessively silent. I made an effort to bridge the quiet. I prepared dinner for myself. I turned on the TV but didn't really watch. I poured myself a glass of wine, hoping it would ease my tension. Yet the solitude lingered beside me. An unwelcome visitor I was powerless to dismiss. At approximately 8 o'clock my phone vibrated. A message had arrived from Mark. "Mark. Hello, I've just wrapped up my work. Strolling through your neighborhood. Is there anything you require?" My gaze lingered on the screen for what felt like an eternity. I might have chosen to decline. I ought to have declined. Yet my fingers danced across the keys before my thoughts could fully align. Myself. It seems the backyard light has ceased to function once more. I intended to hold off for David, but if you're nearby. His response arrived with remarkable speed. "I'm en route." 15 minutes passed, and a gentle knock echoed softly against the door. And just like that, he appeared. Mark entered, cradling a modest toolkit in his hands. "Hello," he murmured gently. "Hello," I responded. My voice seemed diminished, almost fragile. He made his way directly to the backyard. I trailed behind him, observing his meticulous efforts on the light. It was a brief moment. Before long, the yard was enveloped in a gentle golden glow once more. Upon his completion, I expressed my gratitude. "You really didn't need to make this journey," I murmured softly. Mark gave a slight shrug. "It's no bother at all. Moreover, I couldn't bear the thought of you being here by yourself all night." A moment of silence lingered in the air. A silence that conveys deeper meanings than any spoken phrase. "Would you care to join me for a drink?" I inquired. It escaped my lips before I had the chance to rein it in. He cast a glance my way, lingering for just a heartbeat. He nodded in agreement. "Indeed. I would appreciate that. Once more we found ourselves in the kitchen. 2 glasses of wine await. Gentle dialogue. Yet this time it carried a distinct sensation. Increased intensity. Initially, our conversation revolved around the little details. Labor. The children. The community. Yet as time passed, the words became increasingly weighty. You appear changed recently, Mark remarked softly. In what way is it different? He paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. As if you're bearing a weight that remains unspoken. Seems as though you are feeling a sense of sadness. I gazed into my glass. I suppose I've simply been sensing a kind of invisibility, I confessed. I exist in this space, yet I remain unnoticed. Not any longer. Mark paused, enveloped in silence for a brief moment. Then he spoke gently. I perceive you, Anna. The words crashed over me like a relentless tide. Uncomplicated. Yet within them lay all that I had yearned to listen to. I gazed up at him. In that fleeting instant we remained perfectly still, caught in a suspended silence. The atmosphere was heavy, weighty, vibrant. He placed his glass on the table with deliberate slowness. I did as well. Anna, he murmured softly. I interrupted him before he could complete his thought. Perhaps I was reluctant to confront what lay ahead. I was already aware. Before I could rein in my impulses, I found myself leaning in, and he encountered me at the midpoint. The initial kiss was gentle, uncertain, as if we were both cautiously exploring the depths of a reality we understood was far beyond our reach. Yet it delved further. In that instant, all I had been suppressing, solitude, desire, the subtle pain of countless unnoticed years, flowed forth. His hands found their way to my face, enveloping it with a tender touch, as if I were something delicate, as if he had been anticipating this moment for ages. As we finally drew away, I found myself gasping for air. He was as well. This is not right, I murmured. I understand, he whispered. Yet, I find it impossible to deny this desire. A hush enveloped the space, a perilous fragile hush. And then, our lips met once more. This time it felt distinct, without a moment's doubt. Unstoppable. Simply an unrefined, hushed longing. He guided me into the living room. In the gentle illumination of the backyard light filtering through the windows, we finally stepped over the threshold we had both been cautiously navigating for weeks. It unfolded at a measured pace. It lacked any sense of wildness. The pace was languid, nearly sacred, as if two souls are grasping at the fading echoes of their significance to one another. In the stillness that followed, we remained there, enveloped in quietude. The air was imbued with a subtle blend of wine and rain, mingling with an elusive scent that eluded our grasp. His hand lay gently atop mine. Silence speaks volumes. Only the immense burden of our actions. As I finally propped myself up, the weight of reality surged back in. David. My union. All that I was putting on the line. I regret calling you, I murmured. Mark gazed at me, his eyes gentle yet brimming with an emotion I couldn't quite decipher. You didn't reach out to me, he murmured softly. We had arrived before. Well before this evening. In quietude I adorned myself. He escorted me to the threshold. Just before I crossed the threshold, he took my hand in his, simply grasped it, reluctant to release. I have no regrets about this, he murmured gently. I took a deep breath. I don't either, I murmured softly. Yet within me, I could already sense the heavy burden of guilt beginning to take hold. Once he departed, I found myself perched on the edge of the bed, my gaze fixed on the floor beneath me. My heart raced on, a wild drumbeat in my chest. My thoughts were whirling in a chaotic dance. In that moment of clarity, I came to understand. The path forward was irrevocable. That evening, when David rang from his hotel room, I responded as if everything was perfectly normal. We discussed his meeting. Concerning the children. The topic at hand is the weather. My voice remained steady, equally balanced. Yet within me, a tempest of screams raged. I reassured myself that it would only happen this one time. A fleeting lapse in strength. A thing I could securely stash and leave behind. Yet, beneath the surface, I was aware of the reality all along. This was not the conclusion. It marked the dawn of something new. Following that night, nothing remained the same. And yet, everything remained the same. David returned home from his journey the following evening. He entered the room, pressed his lips gently to my cheek, set his bag down, and began recounting the details of his meetings. A smile graced my lips. I paid attention. I acknowledged with a subtle nod at the appropriate moments. The entire time, I sensed the heavy burden of my actions resting heavily upon my chest. Yet, there's something peculiar about guilt. It doesn't always hold you back. At times, it ignites an even deeper desire for that very thing. The following day, Mark failed to send me a text. I chose not to send him a message. Silence enveloped us both. Yet, silence could not obliterate the events that transpired. It only amplified the noise within my mind. After a span of 2 days, a message from him arrived. "May we have a conversation?" My gaze lingered on the screen, time slipping away unnoticed. I ought to have overlooked it. I ought to have declined. Yet I refrained. This time we gathered at his place. Silence enveloped the surroundings. Impartial. As soon as my eyes fell upon him, every carefully crafted phrase I had prepared, about how it was impossible to repeat, how it had been an error, simply vanished. He didn't kiss me immediately. He merely cast his gaze in my direction, as if he were committing every detail of me to memory, that we were descending into a depth from which there would be no return. I recall gazing at the ceiling, experiencing a strange blend of vitality and emptiness simultaneously. Mark's fingers glided over my arm as he spoke in a gentle whisper. "Anna, I understand that you can't walk away from him. I'm not requesting that of you. Yet I cannot feign indifference to my desires." I remained silent, for the simple reason that I was unable to. Thus it commenced. A serene cadence. A life of duality. Days spent with David felt monotonous. The first sip of morning coffee. Casual conversation regarding professional matters. Evenings spent facing one another. Our dialogues courteous and expected. As darkness enveloped the world, he would turn onto his side, surrendering to slumber with effortless grace. In the stillness of the night, I would find myself lying there, gazing up at the ceiling, lost in thoughts of Mark. And then came the days spent with Mark. Our encounters were infrequent, only once a week. At times, simplicity speaks volumes. At times, even greater. Perpetually in his domain. Or during David's absence. Perpetually cautious. Perpetually serene. In Mark's presence, I felt truly alive. Vibrant. Seeking. He would gaze at me as if I were a treasure, something truly unique. He would caress me as if I were the sole woman in existence. Yet each time I walked away from him, the weight of guilt came rushing back. It adhered to me as if it were an extension of my very being. I would make my way home, cleanse my face, switch out my attire, and re-enter the world that awaited me. The existence in which I held the title of David's wife. The existence in which I wore a smile, prepared meals, and embraced the character that was anticipated of me. I began to observe the fissures, the small deceptions I shared, the justifications. The tone of my voice was unervingly serene as I uttered, "I'm just meeting a friend," or, "I'm going for a walk." David never dared to question me. He placed his full trust in me, and that only exacerbated the situation. Mark, conversely, began to crave something greater. One evening, as we lingered in each other's embrace, he drew me near and whispered gently, "Anna, I long to take you out. I long for a dinner where we can simply enjoy each other's company, free from the weight of watchful eyes. How I long to drift off beside you and greet the morning in your presence. Not merely within these pilfered moments." A constriction gripped my chest. "Mark, you understand I can't provide you with that." "I understand," he replied. Yet my desire remains unquenched. The stillness that followed was palpable, for we were both aware of the reality that lay before us. We found ourselves inhabiting an environment that lacks sustainability. A chasm exists between desire and the understanding that it was never meant to endure. One evening, following yet another dinner with David, I made my way to the bathroom and secured the door behind me. I gazed into the depths of my reflection in the mirror. The reflection staring back was unfamiliar, a stranger in the glass. She was not the partner David believed her to be. Yet, she was not the light-hearted woman Mark perceived during their serene moments shared. She existed in a space of duality, a soul adrift. David began to observe subtle shifts. "Lately, you seem to have your mind elsewhere," he remarked one evening. "Is all well?" I summoned a smile. "I'm okay. Simply weary." He inclined his head in agreement. Did not exert pressure. I didn't catch that. And that intensified my longing even further. As time stretched on, the pain intensified, burrowing deeper within. Each moment I shared with Mark made me feel increasingly vibrant and increasingly burdened by guilt. On a rainy afternoon, Mark embraced me after our time together and murmured, "I cherish you." The words lingered in the atmosphere. Weighty, genuine. I held my silence. Not that I lacked the sensation. Yet, uttering it would render it all too tangible. Excessively perilous. I leaned my head against his chest, eyes closed, yearning for the world to pause, if only for a fleeting moment. Yet, the world continues to move forward. Life never hits the brakes. And beneath the surface, I sensed that something was bound to shatter. For one cannot dwell in dual realities indefinitely. That evening I returned home and perched on the edge of the bed as David tended to his teeth with the toothbrush. I surveyed the space, the cherished photographs of our family, the life we had crafted side by side. In that moment it dawned on me that I was positioned upon a fault line. A single misstep and all could come crashing down. Yet I found myself unable to cease. Not at this moment. Even though I understood it was misguided, Mark was the sole person who truly allowed me to embrace my authentic self. I had always sensed that it was destined to end. Yet there exists a profound distinction between mere knowledge and the depth of emotion. Time stretched on, transforming weeks into months. Mark and I continued to find each other in fleeting instances, perpetually cautious, perpetually serene. And yet, with every day that went by, it seemed to grow more burdensome. He began to distance himself in subtle ways, equally affectionate, equally compassionate, simply more subdued, as if he bore a burden that eluded definition. One evening after we had shared our time together, I sensed it. A change lingered in the air. He reclined next to me, his gaze fixed on the ceiling, enveloped in silence for what felt like an eternity. At last he murmured gently, "Anna, this can't go on any longer." I faced him, feeling a constriction in my chest. "Could you clarify what you mean?" He breathed out gently, as if the words were a source of pain. "I find myself sinking deeper. And I understand that this is all you can offer me." I reassured myself that I could manage, yet here I am struggling to cope. It is shattering my very core. A constriction gripped my throat. "Mark, I beg you don't." He inclined his head slightly, a subtle gesture of disbelief. "You possess a life, Anna. A spouse. A household united. I cannot be the one to shatter that into pieces. I can no longer maintain the facade that I'm content with merely fragments of you." All fell quiet in the room. Weighty. Concluding. Emotion surged within me, yet I fought to hold it at bay. What words could I possibly find? Leaving David was simply not an option for me. I was unable to provide Mark with the life he desired. I couldn't keep him hidden in the shadows for all eternity. "I have no regrets," Mark murmured softly. "I don't either," I murmured softly. He glanced my way then, his gaze gentle yet tinged with sorrow. "I adore you," he declared. I parted my lips to respond. Yet, silence enveloped the moment. For to speak it aloud would only deepen the pain. Instead, I simply took hold of his hand, gripped it firmly, as though grasping it tightly could freeze the very essence of time itself. Yet, time marches on relentlessly. Some farewells are unavoidable, even when your heart is unprepared. A week later, Mark revealed that he had accepted a job offer in a different state. The opportunity was indeed a favorable one. A fresh urban landscape. A fresh beginning. "I must begin anew," he declared. "It's time for me to let go." On the eve of his departure, he sought me out for a final meeting. As I swung the door open, he stood there, wearing that familiar warm smile. Yet there was a weariness in his gaze, as if a dam had finally burst after years of restraint. Initially, there was silence between us. We lingered in the doorway, our gazes locked in silent conversation, attempting to etch the experience into memory. He delved into his bag and retrieved a small envelope. "This is for you," he murmured gently. Within lay a photograph. A photograph of me captured during one of those afternoons. Yet it was not staged. It lacked refinement. There I was, perched by his window, gazing out at the glow beyond. And within my gaze, I beheld a sight I hadn't encountered in years: vitality. Desiring. Something genuine. My breath hitched in my throat. "Mark!" I breathed softly. He moved nearer, softly tucking a stray lock of hair behind my ear. "You brought back the feeling of truly caring for someone," he said softly. "Though it was never intended to endure." Tears began to spill over in that moment. For I was certain this was the moment. The final moment. He pressed his lips against mine with a gentle tenderness. Not with desire. Not with yearning. Yet there was a softness in it that seemed to convey both gratitude and farewell. As he withdrew, he paused to press his forehead gently against mine for a fleeting moment. He took a step back. We both refrained from uttering the word goodbye. There was no necessity for that. The silence had already inscribed its message. I observed him depart. Observed the fading glow of the taillights as they vanished into the distance. And in an instant he vanished. That evening, I found myself solitary in the living room, cradling the photograph in my hands. I gazed at it for what felt like an eternity, regarding the woman depicted in the image. In the version of myself that Mark had witnessed, the one who remained vibrant beneath the layers of years spent in obscurity. I tucked the photograph away in a drawer. The very drawer that remains untouched by anyone else. Upon David's return home, he pressed a gentle kiss on my cheek and inquired about the events of my day. A smile graced my lips. "Very well," I replied. "As per usual." Life resumed its usual rhythm after that. The identical patterns. The identical serene dawns. The identical dinners where everything seemed unchanged. Yet I stood apart. For when someone truly perceives your essence, the sensation of being unseen becomes a distant memory. In the stillness of the night, I find myself reaching for the photograph. I gaze upon her, the figure captured in the photograph, and I recall that fleeting instant when I felt genuinely alive once more. Genuinely observed. I understand that I will never encounter Mark again. Yet he remains a part of me. Silently. As if it were a hidden truth. It feels like an unexplainable fragment of my being. In moments of quiet, I softly utter the words that remained unspoken that night. "I cherished you as well."